Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Great to have you with us. We're here again to, take those complex topics, sift through the information, and hopefully give you some clear insights.
Hmm.
Today, we're diving into something pretty unique, really quite unsettling, actually. Our source material for this deep dive puts forward a theory about Iran. Well, it's a theory so strange, it honestly sounds like something from a dark fantasy novel. But it's presented as a lived reality there, a chilling one.
It is, and it centers on this really profound and, frankly, quite perplexing question that our source is grappling with. Why is it that the people of Iran, who have such a long, rich history of resisting oppression, why do they seem, well, eerily silent right now?
Especially now, right?
Exactly. Especially given the context the source lays out. You've got the regime tightening its grip, tensions escalating with Israel, the shadow of war. It's immense pressure. So amidst all that, why don't we hear a nation rising up? It's a big question.
It really is.
Yeah.
And our source, it asks, is it just fear? Is it exhaustion? Both seem plausible, right? But then it takes a sharp turn. It suggests it could be something. Well, something far darker. It sort of warns us up front, saying what we're about to explore may sound like fiction.
Mhm.
But then it adds, in Iran, fiction has long become reality. Wow. That's a heavy statement to start with.
It really is.
So let's try and unpack that. The source says at the heart of this silent despair in Iran, there's a circle of men. It describes them as untouchable, unshakable, cloaked in something it called, provocatively, deeper than power. Okay. When you first read that phrase, deeper than power, what did that suggest to you? Beyond just, tanks and prisons.
Yeah, that phrase immediately signals something beyond conventional control, doesn't it? It's not just politics or military might. And the source names Ali Khamenei and this supreme leader, of course. Ibrahim Raisi, the president who carries that grim nickname, the Butcher of Tehran. Mohseni Ejei, the judiciary chief known for his rulings, but the source also mentions this rumored command over fear itself, which is interesting, and Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, the parliament speaker. Military background, now in what the source calls civilian deception.
Okay, so these are the key figures.
Right, but here's where it gets really unsettling and deeply controversial. It's the source's claim about them. It says that in the eyes of many Iranians, these men aren't just politicians, they've become sorcerers of silence.
Sorcerers of silence. That phrase really,
It's
it really jumps out. But what does the source mean by that? Is it literal? Are they saying actual sorcery? Or is it a metaphor for something else?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the source treads carefully here. It suggests these figures govern not with logic, not with hope, but with, these are its words, hexes of fear, with unseen spells, and spiritual poisons laced into everyday life.
Wow. Spiritual poisons.
Yeah. Now, the source does acknowledge, okay, some people might read this metaphorically, like it's a symbol for psychological control that's so intense, so pervasive, it feels almost supernatural. But, and this is crucial, it also states explicitly that for others it's not a metaphor. They believe it's quite literal.
They actually believe these leaders are casting spells.
That seems to be what the source is reporting. Some people believe, yes. The key insight, though, perhaps, how extreme oppression can warp reality itself. It can create this subjective experience where your own will, your agency, feels like it's been hexed or poisoned from the outside. So resistance doesn't just feel dangerous, it feels internally impossible. It's a powerful way to describe that feeling of absolute control.
Okay, all right. So let's run with this idea for a moment, this concept of a dark enchantment from the source. How does it say this? This spell is actually woven. It's not wands and potions, presumably.
No, exactly. The source describes it being woven not with words, but with infrastructure, pipelines specifically, and infused not with curses whispered in the dark, but with the basics of life: air, water, bread.
Through air, water, and bread. How?
Well, it paints this incredibly insidious picture.
It also mentions these terrifying whispers, suggesting the regime turned the country into a laboratory of psychological control. That sounds methodical, like it goes way beyond just surveillance or arrest. It's about manipulating the whole environment.
Precisely. And that's where the source details these alleged mechanisms. They're quite disturbing. For example, the food. It claims the food is contaminated not with poison that kills, but poison that numbs.
Numbing poison. So not literal cyanide, but something else.
Exactly. The source seems to imply it's less about physical toxins and more about a kind of psychological conditioning. Something that erodes the will, makes people feel sluggish, hopeless, like the very act of eating keeps you subdued. It's a conceptual poison aimed at the mind, the spirit.
So sustenance itself becomes a tool of control. That's bleak.
Then it talks about the water. Filtered through silence, it says. Heavy with things you can't see. And the air. Not just polluted physically, but thick with a heaviness that chokes the will.
So it's environmental but psychological too.
Yes, it's like a form of environmental psychological warfare, according to the source. And it stresses this isn't just about cameras on street corners. It's bigger. It's an energy, a constant dread, a cloud that never lifts. The source sums it up starkly. Black magic, but bureaucratic.
Black magic but bureaucratic. That's a chilling phrase, the mundane mixed with the mystical.
Right. It captures that blend of systematic state control with something that feels deeply spiritually wrong.
And the supposed result of all this alleged spell, well, the source says it silences the scream before it's even formed. Just think about that. Suppressing the outcry before it even starts.
It's profound.
It also says it paralyzes courage and turns rebellion into fatigue. So the outcome described is a nation where people know the truth, they see what's happening, but they just can't speak it. They feel the anger, the rage, but they can't act. The source calls it a silent genocide, not of the body, but of the soul.
The soul.
Yeah, obliterating the spirit, not just the physical person. It really conveys that sense of utter powerlessness the source is describing. And we have to remember, as the source points out, this isn't happening in a vacuum. These aren't just abstract fears. They exist alongside very real, undeniable atrocities. Reports of torture chambers, executions presented as justice, women killed over a strand of hair, students vanishing. These things are documented.
Yes, the source is very clear on that.
And it specifically reminds us of those tragic cases that caught the world's attention, even if briefly. Masa Amini, whose death ignited such fury, Navid Afkari, the wrestler, executed despite global pleas, and those 1,500 people reportedly killed during the 2019 protests. The source mentions mass graves, lives erased, never even named. It's just horrific.
A terrible list of crimes. And yet, the source emphasizes still silence, still control. And this is the paradox, isn't it? How can such brutality not break the dam?
Exactly.
The source offers this really deep insight here. It suggests the fear goes beyond just the fear of dying, which is obviously huge. But it says it's more than that. It's the fear of losing your mind, of being isolated, forgotten, broken from within. That suggests a psychological attack, a siege on the inner self.
It's not just breaking bodies, but breaking minds.
That's the implication, a systematic dismantling of the human spirit. It makes you consider just how devastating that would feel. And this leads to the source's concept of a curse over consciousness. It argues that in Iran, talk of negative energy isn't just, New Age jargon. It's described as a lived experience, like the land itself feels heavy, cursed.
A collective malaise.
Something like that.
Yeah.
It suggests goes beyond individual troubles and just permeates everything. It's felt physically and emotionally.
And the source describes tangible effects of this psychological weight. People waking up already tired, living without dreams, forgetting how to hope. These aren't just poetic descriptions of sadness. The source presents them as the daily grind for people under this alleged spell, a slow draining of life force.
Yeah, and it gives some truly heartbreaking examples. It talks about children growing up not playing, but surviving. That paints such a stark picture, doesn't it? Childhood lost to just enduring. And parents whispering lullabies through barred windows. A simple act of love, burdened by the weight of it all.
There's another detail in the source that really got me. It's that even prayers feel heavy, like they're unanswered, as if someone or something is intercepting them before they reach the sky. That idea is so insidious that even your most private hope, your connection to the divine maybe, is being interfered with, blocked. It just underscores that total sense of helplessness the source describes.
It really does.
So bringing it back then, if we circle back to that original question, but now with all this really disturbing context from the source, why don't they rise? It's a question we hear a lot from outside Iran, sometimes maybe with a hint of judgment, like, why isn't sheer willpower enough?
Right, and the source provides this chilling answer. It says rising isn't just dangerous, and obviously it is incredibly dangerous there, but it goes further. It says it feels impossible when your spirit has been drugged, when your mind is fogged, or when you're not even sure anymore if what you feel is yours or something put inside you.
Yeah. That's that questioning of your own feelings, your own thoughts. That's deep.
It speaks to that insidious nature of the control being described, doesn't it? It's not just external chains. It's like an internal captivity. Your very sense of self feels compromised.
Yeah.
And the nature of this evil, as the source portrays it, it's not loud and obvious. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It infects. And crucially, the source says it endures because it is unseen. It's presented as this quiet, pervasive corruption of the will itself. It makes resistance feel almost fundamentally impossible because the enemy isn't just outside, it's permeated your inner world.
It is a truly harrowing picture that our source material paints. A really dark interpretation of events. But importantly, it doesn't end there. It concludes with a message of hope, actually. It says, no spell lasts forever. No curse is eternal.
And that's the crucial counterpoint, isn't it? It pulls back from complete despair. It reinforces this idea that even the darkest enchantment cracks when the will to live becomes stronger than the fear of dying. It's a reminder that despite everything, that fundamental human desire for freedom, for life itself, it can ultimately break through even the most insidious oppression.
So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, as you process this really challenging material we've unpacked today. What does it actually take for people to break free when it feels like their very spirit, their consciousness is under siege? Our source forces us to consider that, and maybe also the incredible enduring power of those who've had almost everything taken, except perhaps that fundamental will to be free. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into some very difficult, very thought-provoking ideas. We'll see you next time.